pick up the guitar, and what do you see? A bunch of frets, random frets. But how do you start associating these to harmony and melody, just like a piano player can see his instrument? The first thing you gotta ask yourself is, what is a chord anyway? If you play a G major chord, if you start obsessing over what are the notes that construct that chord, you're already halfway there. So, for example, if I see G, I can think about a lot of other sounds that I can get from that G chord, constructed from the notes of that chord. It's just different ways of organizing them on the fretboard. Now, let me show you what I mean. If you're just thinking about any chord, let's take G. It has the notes G, B, and D in it, right? Those notes are organized in this very popular G voicing. And I understand why it's very popular. It sounds beautiful. It gets all the resonance out of the guitar. And it's, you have some open strings, and that's great. But the chord notes that are in this chord are G, B, and D. So go ahead and just play them on a single string. Get to know that chord on a deeper level on the instrument. G, B, and D. And then you have that right here again. So you see, you're locating the notes of that chord. Now see if you can do that on the next string. B, D, G, B, D, G. Next string, you have an open D, then G, B, D, G, and B. Next string, you have an open G, then B, D, back to D, G, then B, and D. Then the B string, you have an open B, then D, G, B, D, G, and of course the high E string, same thing as we had on the low. So now see that you can do that and say the notes. Actually take the time to say the notes, but not only the notes, you can also say the harmonic numbers. So if you're playing G, say root or 1. If you're playing B, say third. If you're playing D, say fifth. Start thinking in harmonic numbers. That will really help you down the line. What you're gonna start doing now is thinking about those chords on two adjacent strings. If you take a look at this G over here, it's the root, right? Just down here below we have D, right? So we already have a representation of G on two strings. This D is the fifth and this G is the root. And now we can just go ahead and do that with the next pair. So we have B now, and we can locate G right over here. So we have really beautiful double stops. Then if we go to the next note, D, we have B right over here on the B string. And then we can play those like that. And then we can locate that also on the next set of adjacent strings. So we have D and B, G and D, and B, B and G. So that's what we have so far. Then on the next adjacent string, we have the two open strings. So that will be D the fifth and G the root. Then G the root and B the third, B and D, and then we're back. And we can do that also with the other adjacent strings. So we can go B and D on the A and D strings. So B and D, then D and G, G and B and D. lowest adjacent strings, G and B, B and D, D and G, and G and B. So that will be that. Let's play that in time. 1, 2, 3, 4. So already you can start visualizing the chord that you choose, any chord, that can be any chord. You can choose to see it all over the fretboard. Now let's add another adjacent string, and we actually gonna have the entire triad by doing so. We're taking our double stops and we're adding another note. Now we have a full triad over here. So that will be B, D, and G. Now if we take our next couple and we put another chord tone below, now we have the full chord, D, G, and B. Then we go to the next pair, and we put G. We have all of the inversions. We go to the next set, and we do the same thing. We take the couple, D and B, and we put G at the bottom. We can also do that with the open strings, right? And we can put D at the bottom. Then we can do that with these 3 strings. We have B, D, and G, D, G, and B. Root position, we have the root, 3rd, and 5th. And then we have the first inversion here. We can go on and do that also on the low set. Now let's do that in time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you're really seeing that chord all over. So now the next thing you can start doing is you can start creating arpeggios with this chord. So what we had here is we took our shape, just like our regular shape. We took the low note and doubled it, so we have a nice octave here. And then we continue just with the arpeggio, all the same 3 notes. B, G, D, B, G, D, B, G. Then you invert that chord, and you do the exact same thing. We doubled the octave of the lowest note, and we constructed the arpeggio. Next one. Let's play that in time. 3 and 4 and... So now the next step is to introduce another chord of your choice and do the exact same process. And now for each few days or maybe each week, have a pair of chords or maybe a small progression, maybe 4 chords, and try to see if you can move from one shape to the next with minimum movement. And that's where we're getting into voice leading. So for example, if we stay with major chords today, if I had C, the notes of C are C, E, and G. So I can now just move my triad to the closest option I have, right? Just like we had a root position of G major, The same exact shape is going to be for C, so you can move from G to C. Then you can invert that, G to C. You see I'm moving from the second inversion here, where I have the fifth, D is the fifth, into C, where this is the first inversion. Exactly like we had, the exact shape we had on G over here. First inversion. Then G to C. Let's play that. By starting to get into that mindset, actually obsessing over that mindset, you're really starting to develop a pianistic-like point of view on the instrument, and you're getting outside of just playing the same things over and over again. You're opening your awareness, harmonic melodic awareness on the fretboard. And I created a full, entire step-by-step system that you can master harmony and melody on the fretboard. From the very foundations like triads, arpeggios, to starting to make more interesting sounds with them, like adding nines, chromaticism, and how to start applying these over different chord changes. Then we start going into the entire scale alchemy of the fretboard, seeing all the diatonic options and seeing scales all over the fretboard. And then we start tapping even into more advanced techniques like bebop techniques and jazz standards. From there we go into the jazz essentials, so I cover everything from drop 2 voicings all the way to 7th chord arpeggios all over the fretboard, and even etudes to study how to connect all of the dots so far. Then from there we go into melodic minor and diminished and jazz language. It's an entire academy waiting for you on wiseguitar.com. So if you're interested in checking that out, the link is in the description of this video. Other than that, hope this was helpful, and feel free to drop me any comments or questions you have in the comments below, and I'll be happy to reply. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.